Ladies and gentlemen, it is a remarkable moment when one can realize that all phenomena, all perception, sensation, mental formation, consciousness are emptiness. And this is the most refined and most profound, let's say, idea for me. And I began especially this from Heart Sutra because today it's a heart meeting for me, and I have to say that I'm deeply honored to be here with Zen Master Vincent, Keisen, Vuillemin, who is also a physicist, doctor in physics, and he was allowed me to say, deeply involved in what was the most amazing experiment from the history of humanity, the LHC in Geneva from CERN. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.
Allowed me to present Professor Andrei Dorobanțu, my friend Andrei, and I have to say that you were deeply involved in bringing in Romania the extreme light and NP experiment, who is a kind of let's say CERN of Romania. Thank you for accepting the invitation in 55 minutes where we can travel inside and in fact outside ourselves. Keisen, please, it was, and allow me to say this, you said that it is, you prefer that I'm not addressing you with master. You are not at ease with this kind, and you prefer a simple way of life, isn't it? Zen and simplicity.
Mm-hmm. I ask you just to call me by my name of monk, which is Keisen, which is respect of the wise man. You know, people sometimes misinterpret the term of master. I've been given by the compassion of my master the Dharma's transmission, so I have effectively the function of being a master in the transmission lineage.
And you're the 85th patriarch, Zen patriarch?
It depends from where you pass, but actually it's around the 86th one, effectively in this lineage. Mm-hmm. From Buddha, you see, it's like the Amazon. It started with a very small river with Buddha, but at the end, there are many rivers going to the ocean, and our lineage is one of them, yes. I think I'm just I see myself as, like all monks, a simple monk. But I occupy effectively in lineage this function, which doesn't have to be recalled all the time. Okay.
I think it is wonderful because I've talked with Andrei before our show. It is we are living historical moments for mankind when the intuitive knowledge, the ancient knowledge, it can be unified with the scientific knowledge, and your activity in CERN and also as in the field of Zen, that it is not very good to say, but anyway, it represents the unity of this knowledge. I don't know another physicist to be a Zen monk.
Oh, I'm sure there are some other. Effectively, it's not so common to be a bit knowledgeable about those two things. You're right. In the 20th century, things changed a lot. Before, you see, the scientific world was looking at nature like an object outside of oneself, and in parallel, there was all this lineage of inner knowledge, inner observation of the mankind, and they were sort of two separated domains. Now, it changed from in around the 1920 with one of the biggest revolution in science, which is the quantum physics. No one would recall quantum physics, but it appeared that for the first time it was realized from the microscopic world, actually, that when you observe a phenomenon, actually you will project this phenomenon in reality, and you will determine in which state of reality it will be found. And immediately the people took that idea also on the human point of view, saying that the observer in science, or observer like each of us during our daily life, is not only an observer looking at a sort of a fixed universe that he would just observe from outside, but he's also an actor on that. And the fact to observe the world is actually acting on this world in our world, the way we see the world. We are actor in seeing the world. So it was the first time it was realized that the observer and the object are not as separated as one would have thought before. And then he joined in particle physics. The later development also allowed to make several parallelisms between the observation in microscopic physics and life, for example, the question of interdependence. Today, I think more and more the people realize that they are interdependent with each other. You see, the basic of the ecology is the interdependence, and we are not different from the other. Well, you find that in the microscopical world, because particles are not existing by themselves. When you are in the region which is very close to energy, between energy and mass in the quantum world, the particles are constantly exchanging identities. So, and they do that during the time. It changes all the time. Also ourselves and the world is changing. So if you take those two notions from the particle physics, interdependence, exchange, continuous exchange and continuous change, you could imagine that you can say that nothing exists really by itself. And that's, I think, what we're facing with more and more in our world, that we cannot consider that we just exist by ourselves. We are interacting more and more with the television, with all the networks. The interaction that we have around the world is becoming immediate, not like in the old century when you were living in a village and it was only this village. Here we are worldly interacting, which is like particles do in particle physics. So there is some parallelism that we can recognize. And there are also other more recent notions which have been expressed in the old sutra from Buddhism, where with the latest discovery find sort of verification.
Yes, Andrei, the sutras, the ancient sutras, and the actual mainstream physics, it's astonishing identity between those.
It's almost an identity, so thank you very much for asking. Well, in a way, scientists have discovered the extreme Oriental wisdom, I shall call it like that. After 1975, when Fritjof Capra published the Tao of Physics. And it was amazing to see that texts in the old Vedas and in the Upanishads are almost
very, very close to the language.
Pages from the physics papers in cosmology, for instance.
That's one particular case, for example, which is well described in the sutra is the question related to the vacuity, which was called
Yes.
sunyata. And okay, now the first thing that it was said in the sutra is vacuity is the dimension of all potentialities. Potentialities of matter, potentiality also of thoughts, potentiality of consciousness. So in Buddhist scripture, vacuity is not a dimension which is empty. It has some sort of a sub-consistence where everything is undefined and there is no difference between anything. So really the world of potentiality, but it's a living world from which everything is extracted. All the phenomena are extracted, like our conscious thoughts, but also matter. And so lately in physics, with the latest Nobel Prize probably, everybody heard at least of what's called the Higgs mechanism. And what is interesting in this discovery is it was predicted like 40 years ago, but in those terms, if I take now the physics to try to express it in Buddhist terms, vacuity in physics is not nothing. It is not empty. It is filled out by sort of energetic fields. Like we know fields like the electromagnetic field, the waves, and the light. Those are fields of energy. And the empty space, if everywhere, if one can say, vacuity is filled out with that field, which is called the Higgs field. And that's with the interaction of vacuity that sort of the protoparticle or some perturbation will just grab energy from vacuity to become matter. Don't forget that energy is matter, is the same thing. We observe matter. So actually, the matter is mostly coming from the energy of vacuity, which is very close to the idea of Zen, where the essence of everything is just vacuity. And then in Zen you would say phenomena are coming from vacuity, and they go back to vacuity. Like you see, particle will be ejected from this dimension of potential energetic field, may spring out in the real world, might disappear again. So you see, there's also this question of impermanence, which you find out also in physics. But it was predicted that the question of vacuity was really the essence of everything in the world. And this latest discovery says the same thing. Actually, the mass is mostly coming from this energetic field with which the protoparticle or flavors, as we say, would take their energy, and at the end will create mass. So that's, now we understand how mass is created. We do not understand what are the flavors. You see, so it's like those, it's not even particle at the beginning, it's like a flavor of particle, so we call them flavor. And they have different status. Some of them attract a lot of energy from the Higgs field, some of them attract less. For example, the light does not attract any energy from the field, so it's why its mass is zero.
It doesn't need any energy.
No. So without this,
it is energy.
It is energy. Mm-hmm. If there would not be this Higgs field, there would be no mass. This universe, our universe and ourselves, would not exist. So in some sense, in essence, we are all formed by this field which is in the vacuity. Vacuity is full of energy.
Vacuity is no other than form, and form is no other than
exactly.
vacuity. Yes.
That's why then we consider that everything is a form. a form of vacuity. For example, when a monk receives the ordination of monk, one doesn't tell him, you are a monk. One says, you have been taking the form of a monk.
The form.
So the point is nothing exists in itself, like in Zen. Which is great, because you see it's against egoism in the normal life. It's also the consciousness that we live together. We are all part of humankind. We live in nature. We live with no separation with our universe. So it's a great thing to understand, or to have this consciousness that we are actually coming from what we consider being nothing.
Yes, and it's not just simply the nothing becoming something, because I must confess that I have always been deeply impressed by the fact that when you are ordained a monk, you also receive a new name. It's like a second birth.
Yes.
So you take another form, as you very beautifully said. You take the form of a monk, and you get a new name, and that happens also in Orthodoxy. Monks, when they are accepted as monks, they take a new name.
So our common names are names without a form, in fact, because our names are a kind of separative names and not names.
The name is just a word. You see,
It's the first form. It's the form with which we are born, and we have to remember the
ego and our names, something like that. The ego, who is not the function of ego is to separate us from the world, the personality, and
yes, of course. First of all, of course, the ego the name is related with the ego. You see, you can say there are some people who dislike totally their name because it does not correspond. So we have some kind of identification with our name. That's also why we receive a new name. To choose a name for a new monk is something to which one should pay big attention. The ego, the ego in Buddhism, you see, the ego is, at the end, it's a word. You know, that's what we believe that we are. Okay, I believe that I am a great manager, so my ego is the ego of a great manager. Or I'm a very rich banker, so my ego is rich banker. But when you start, digging a bit deeper, whom am I really? No. I'm more than I'm different than just a banker or a farmer or something. And you go deeper and deeper, and at the end you find that you're just, a human being, alive. When you have removed all the particularities of your ego. Everyone has an ego, we all have different egos, and of course what separates ourselves from the other is the confrontation of our egos, because we have different egos. So one says generally to go back at our normality, our normal nature of a simple human being. One should try to abandon a bit our ego. It's not really abandoning it, is to, with spiritual practice, you can a bit transform your ego so it becomes transparent. It is not a barrier between yourself and the world. It sort of disappears, not all the time, but sometimes it disappears, which is great because it allows you to be more open. And the ego, where wars are coming from the ego, different conflict also. as the ego of an overall population of people. The ego itself is not bad or good. It becomes bad when the people are attached to their own ego. I'm attached to myself. I want to be the first one. I'm the best. This is bad. So in Zen we try to let it go, if you wish, to be more transparent.
How it has happened to let go of the ego? Is it not the goal of Zen practice to create from ego a kind of enemy?
No, the ego is not no, the goal of Zen practice, you see, there are many people who have different idea on the goal of the Zen practice.
Yes.
Personally, I think the goal of every spiritual practice and way is probably twofold. Is the way of the compassion. First, build in yourself a world in which you can live with joy. Okay? And to do that, by thinking about it is not sufficient. So for that, in Zen, we use the body. So we have a practice of the body and the mind in order to observe ourselves, understand deeply who we are. And then brings a great satisfaction. If you think in life, you would take somebody in the street and you would ask him, what do you think is really satisfying you? How do you think that you can answer in thinking that maybe your life is not just absurd? What makes the great signification of your life? Then to answer those questions, you have to go much beyond from the ego. And the spiritual practice can bring you inner joys and very great satisfaction. And when you live that, of course, you would like that everyone would share this great satisfaction. And then you pass from your practice to the practice of what you do every day, with how you are with the people, because you would like also to create a world in which you can live. And that's the beginning and the essence of compassion. The goal of a spiritual practice is to bring happiness to everyone, to have a world in peace. It's not something only for oneself, but in the process, you have to do that. You have to start by yourself. Because if you are a prisoner of your ego, you will not be able to help humankind. You have to liberate yourself from your ego in order to be open to the other, you see. The same principles. In the very hot summer, you have a bunch of kids, and only one of them has the money to pay himself an ice cream. And he will eat his ice cream in front of all the other ones who do not have an ice cream. Know what he would like, to be happy eating his ice cream, that everyone has one. So naturally, you would like to change the world the way you can. Slowly, bits and pieces first. But the main message is to change mind of people and the way our society works. Is you have to start by the only person that you can really change. That's yourself. And Zen practice, among others, help you to, with the repetition, days, weeks, months, years, to start changing, and that will be seen around you, and slowly it will change the world. It will take years and years, but doesn't matter, one has to start.
Yes, I have very deep respect for physics, among other things, because it offers us a key of understanding the world around and the world within us. And since Keisen spoke from the very beginning about the interdependence of people, as there is interdependence in the particle world. From the first years at university, we learned that particles can be free or can be interacting. And when you consider the particles interacting among themselves, then the technical word is a very common and very simple word. You say that the particle is dressed with all the interactions it is experimenting. And when I was listening now to Keisen, I thought that our problem is to wear the proper dress. If we are not dressing with the proper clothes, then we are lost and we cannot do anything. The first thing we have to do is first to be ourselves satisfied with the dress we are wearing, and then we can go to our neighbor and tell him, well, what a nice dress you have. And that's the beginning of bring. I don't know if I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, quite. You see, it's a in the process, the first vow of a monk is to save all human beings. One can discuss a long time what it means to save a human being.
Bodhisattva.
That's the first vow of the Bodhisattva. Save them from the suffering of their mind, for example. Okay, but this is the vow. That's what you promise to do. But if you want to realize this process, at the same time, you have to change yourself. You cannot just stay exactly the same. Suppose that you are egoist, you have no compassion, you dislike everyone. You cannot save anyone. Okay, so in that process, you have at the same time, through this vow of saving all the human beings, you also have, at the same time, you save yourself. The goal is not to save yourself only and in first, but within this process, you have to make all those efforts to become sort of better, more compassionate, more transparent, to forget about yourself in order to be able to make this gift for the other, to save them. And as a bodhisattva, it means that when everyone is saved, which will be, we don't know when, but it can be every day. You know, it can be in any action of every day. When everyone is saved, then you save yourself. For example, if you have a cake, for example, there are several people, you know, a bodhisattva would certainly cut the cake and offer a piece to everyone, and then we'll take the last one, if there is one left.
If there is one.
I remember the first time I went to the temple in La Gendronnière, I didn't know nothing about it, and then, you know, my mind was toward also sharing things. So, you know, we have a group of 8 and somebody serving the other. And I realized also that one has to care about oneself, because when I had served servant person, I had no salad. So I understood, well, this is not the total way to go, because if I never eat anything, I will not be able to do very much. So it's the same process, you know, at the same time. You try to do your best to liberate people, but you cannot do it unless, in the same time, you liberate yourself. Because it's only if you're fully liberated from all your blockage, ego-like or egoistic view, that you can continue during your life to do that. Otherwise, you'll become tired, you'll have enough of it. At one given moment, you'll say, me first, however. That's a double road. At the same time, the other, and that process yourself would become.
Is it
better.
a painful or a scary process to sit with oneself in zazen, and because in fact all the psychotherapeutical goals are leading to this, to be in touch with our your own reality. But anyway, it is puzzling me because in psychotherapy you are dealing in a certain time with lots of anger, lots of fears, lots of feelings of void, of nothingness. In fact, it's a whole pathology of nothingness, the melancholy, depression. And how do you personally dealt with all those phenomena?
Well, you see, a real spiritual practice is a practice of life. It's something that you do during your entire life. I hope that most of people do not have to go through psychotherapy during their entire life. Okay, well, anyway, there is no spiritual practice if there is no effort. You have to make an effort. Otherwise, it's peanuts. You know, it would be too easy.
Like in life.
I can stand up in the morning saying, well, I'm awake and, you know, I'm not separated. But what does it mean? Okay, if you don't feel it inside. So that's why we use in Zen the body. So we sit effectively. That's something which is great, I believe, because look at the modern world now. You know, everybody is running all the time. For example, in the United States, or also here, maybe less here, but you see people who are running all the day at their work. They go out of their work and they run in the street. So they run all the time. And the people need at one given point just to sit down. Stop and sit down. Quiet, alone, in front of the wall. And instead of always looking at the other or the external world, they start looking at themselves. Okay? So they observe their breathing, their consciousness will be totally mixed with their body. So they acquire a deep knowledge of themselves. Now you cross leg, yes, of course, it's a bit painful at the beginning, but easily somehow you can go over it, over it. Of course, when you do that, any method of approaching yourself internally will certainly open doors. So there are people who, don't like it or can crack up or don't want to see that. Or maybe some other method would be better for them. The Zen it's a practice which is we practice together, but everyone is alone. So you really, there's no distraction. You don't move, you don't need to learn anything. You just sit, there's no distraction. You're alone with yourself. So you will learn about yourself. And the process of learning about yourself, then you can a bit forget about yourself and be open. You see, with the ego, it's maybe another example. The ego is like with the money. Somebody who doesn't have any money and needs some money he thinks about the money all the time. He's obsessed by the money. Well, suppose somebody give him a lot of money. For him, the money has disappeared. The question of money does not exist anymore. Or a prisoner, he thinks about what? He thinks about freedom. And one day, he gets out of jail. He doesn't think about freedom. He's free. So the ego, we are thinking about our ego, and suddenly, with the spiritual practice, it disappears, it's not there. It's not because we have been trying to abandon it. It just goes away. We don't realize it's here anymore. And
spontaneously go away.
Spontaneously. And then really, instead of being prisoner of your ego, the world opens up. There's no separation with the other and no separation with the world. It is it's a deep satisfaction, but it's an experience. It's not something that you can really explain. The people have to do themselves this experience, sort of the experience of vacuity, experience of being connected to everything in the universe. It sounds funny to say, but it's an experience that the people do. It's exactly the experience that Buddha did 6th century before our Jesus Christ.
Andrei, do you think you will try to do zazen or?
Well, I don't know. But one thing. So I was listening to Keisen, and I remembered the story I heard sometime about what happened when Brahma created the world, and he endowed every being with divine nature. And after some time, he saw that not all of them were behaving according to their divine nature. And he decided to take it away from them. And he called his advisors. And he told them, well, you have to suggest a place for hiding their divine nature where they couldn't find it. And they came out with several proposals. And one of them said, we have to dig deep in the ground and put it in the ground. No, he said, it will not work because they are cultivating cereals and things, and they will find it in the sea. Now,
they are fishing.
In the air, no. And then he said, I know where to hide it. In the only place where man does not want to look for, inside themselves. And when I was listening, I understood that this is why we have to have some respect for ourselves and to try to know us, because it's the way maybe we can find inside us our divine nature, and when we find it, then we are, you cannot appreciate, not even recognize, appreciate freedom unless you know what slavery, what bondage is. You have to go through various experiences in order to acknowledge. So a particle before Higgs field, before the Higgs field, before the Higgs mechanism, didn't know what is its true nature. Only when the Higgs particle created the Higgs field and things were coming to pop up from vacuum, they got the nature.
That's why we, maybe continuing what you said, it'd be interesting to say that effectively the question of divine nature can be interpreted with the people in different way. Of course, in the monotheist religion, divine nature is coming from outside. Humankind, although in very old time, everything was in the heart of the people. Somehow at least it's the way I see things. I understand perfectly that not everyone sees the same way. But there was those gods which were external to people that we see now in religion. So when in Buddhism one would talk, for example, of divine nature, or our basic nature, or our essence, it is something. It's not something which would come from outside and be deposited in us by some external God. It's the real proper nature of the human being, including all their relationship with the world, their compassion, love, and everything. That's why that's how we call that nature is not only our nature. Well, I'm alive, okay, I'm a normal human being, alive, but also with all this consciousness of the good, of the gift, of life, of everything. So in Buddhism, by looking inside yourself, is to go back and find this nature. Master Deshimaru was saying, I think a good sentence to define it, it's the place in yourself which cannot be burned by the fire and cannot be wet by the water. So it's your sort of a permanent, indestructible heart. Some people call that their soul, for example. In modern society, unfortunately, many people have a life where they have lost their soul. And religious practice, what it is, allows people to reconnect with their, not only with themselves, with their imaginary, but also with their deep soul. That's something which you cannot express in words, because it's deposited not only in your mind but also your body. You feel it. It's the sort of the essence of the real life. What is the real life? What is the most satisfying things in life is just this point that you call divine nature, or we would call nature, or our deepest heart.
You evoke Master Keisen Deshimaru, so allowed me to offer you from Herald Publishing House this book. Thank you. And
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Andrei. We have 7 minutes, but yes. I think it's a right moment. Also to thank Radu Grațianu for those kindly and compassionate and inspired sounds, especially make for us. And I think now also to thank to Ionuț Nedelcu, who is a very discreet and remarkable professor and Zen monk who it's the organizer, may I say like that. Would you accept, Keisen, to say a few words about Mokusho Zenji, the place in Bucharest when each one of us can go to practice the Zen?
Yes. So the name of the street is complicated for me, but I forgot. But it is so it's Mokusho Zenji.
It's strada complexului numărul 2 bis.
Okay, thank you. So it's a temple, a Zen dojo, and which has been created by the people from Bucharest, and also Master Myoken, who lives in Budapest, who gave me Dharma transmission. So a Zendo, a Zen temple or a Zen dojo is a place where everyone can come. Everyone can come. Of course, there's some schedule. There is the Zazen, so the Zen meditation in the morning and in the evening. There are very little things to learn and to show in them, just to tell the people how to sit down, and then they will practice by themselves and learn by themselves. So everyone is very welcome if they want to try. You see, in Buddhism and in Zen, you have to make the first step. If you make the first step, and the first step is to come to a dojo and practice. From then on, if you like it, you will continue. And if you have the chance of liking it, then you can spend your life practicing it in the morning. We in any Sangha in the Occident, here in particular the Zen temple in Bucharest, it's part of what's called the Mokusho Sangha. Mokusho is the name of the Zen master who was my master and was also the master of Myoken. And that's the reason why Master Myoken and myself got together. We got together in the love of our master.
Master Etienne Zeisler.
Yes, Etienne Mokusho Zeisler, who was our master. You see, encountering a master does not need many sentences, can be immediate. You see, you look at someone, you recognize it immediately, you love him immediately, deeply in your heart. So we share this feeling, And when Mokusho Zesler died, before dying, he asked Master Myoken to come back in his own country, because Etienne Mokusho was from Hungary originally, moving to France. And then Master Myoken came back here and extended his mission with the people of Bucharest, who built a wonderful dojo. It's magnificent. The people should come just to see how it's beautiful inside. It's a very quiet place. You can rest sitting there, listen to some teaching, and start understanding that yourself is not only made of what you're doing every day, running around all the time, but you start off developing a deep feeling of humankind for yourself and for the other. Now practice, of course practice needs effort. When we practice a session or we practice a retreat during the night, even for the old monk like me, old in age, I would say it's not so easy, but you know, you can measure yourself also. You can measure yourself. You learn about yourself. And of course, the best is the repetition. It's not like some technique in the new age where you pay for a course of 2 weeks, a lot of money in addition, and then you leave, and of course you think that you have learned a lot of things because you paid a lot of money. Here, spiritual practice is like in any religion, is going through repetition. It's a process of life. My master, so Mokusho, when he was Zen, what is Zen? He said, well, Zen is life. If you don't like the term Zen, say it is life. This is because after years, then your life becomes Zen, and Zen is your life. So at the beginning, you practice like you would practice anything, and with the repetition, it really enter your life, it makes part of your life. And of course, for a monk, the goal is not just to sit alone here on the summit of a mountain, but it to transport all that spiritual practice and compassion for the world. So if you want to understand yourself, so you have this deep intimacy with yourself, and you want to try to change your life, have a better life, find the deepest signification of your life, the only thing is required for you is to do the first step, to come to a Zen dojo. If you don't like it, okay, you go back. But if you have the chance to like it, that's your start. And you can live a wonderful life of a spiritual life, maybe monk if you wish.
A remarkable invitation. We have to take profoundly in consideration. Unfortunately, we are in our last minute. Thank you very much for this lesson of life, the lesson of Zen.
Thank you.
And we are hardly waiting next time. Andrei, thank you for accepting so kindly to be here.
Thank you so much. I've been here.
And with your permission, let's hear Radu Grațianu and give him not the word but the sound for our finish.
It was very good. Thank you all. I was delighted.
Mulțumim.
Mulțumim frumos.